Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're back. We've been off for a month. I'm glad I'm doing the show again. I always look forward to these shows, especially when I have a awesome guest on, like today. Well, every show's got awesome guests, but I'm particularly looking forward to the one today. So, I wanted to, before Simon moves off me, I've been cleaning. I've been doing some summer cleaning, and I've been cleaning out my attic. And look, I found a VB5 T-shirt from '97 VBITS conference that I attended. I don't think I've seen this T-shirt in 25 years, and so uh, I can't believe I keep these things this long. But anyway, let's talk about the show. Simon, there we go. So my special guest today is Khalid from JetBrains Developer Advocate. So if you have JetBrains questions or ASP.NET or anything like that, make sure you start putting your questions in right now while we have them on the line, so we can get your questions answered. We were having a lively discussion before the show started, so I'm sure this is going to be another great discussion with Khalid. So let's get going because I want to leave as much time as possible for him. Just make sure I'm touching the right thing. Oh yeah, let's talk. That's tech news. Did I miss the tech news? I did something wrong. Maybe it's coming up. Anyway, I wanted to promote the season 4 finale, which will be on September 7th. I'm putting together a panel of myself and 5 other experienced software engineers that have been around as long as I have, if not longer, to talk about how to navigate your career in the later stages of your career. And because this past year, I've been going through a tough time. I just never, I never thought at this point in my career it would be this hard to keep it going. And, I could definitely say I have an article coming out right before this show where I'll be talking about this, but I can definitely say that the first 15 years of my career were a lot easier than my last 15 years. And so I wanted to gather a group of people who have been around the block per se, and talk about all the advice we would give to younger developers to prepare to where we are now. And one of the main reasons is, when I started software engineering, I didn't hear about any of this kind of stuff. Like, what are you going to be doing in a career 30 years from now? And how do you prepare for that? Never saw anything. I only read one thing about salaries, which I talk about in the article, but that is literally it. And so because of that, I haven't, I'll admit that, I didn't prepare like I should have. And so, I have a lot of advice to give on things that I should have done better. And I'm sure these other people who, like I said, have been around as long as I have, if not longer, will have a lot of great advice to share, because I want younger developers to have when they hit 30 years in this career, I want them to still be really enjoying their career and having fun and, working on fun projects. And so I hope you'll join us live for that show. It's going to be an extended hour-and-a-half show where you can ask your questions to all of us, especially my panel. And so mark your calendars now, go to the blog page. The link is right there, and make sure you join us for season 4 finale. It's going to be a big one. So I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this show since I dreamt it up earlier this year. So, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What happened what, a week or so ago? The CrowdStrike that hit the world and basically brought down part of the entire world. Pretty amazing how just one little line of code can, or actually a line in a file can just really mess things up. And so I have an article coming out in a couple of weeks where I do mention a CrowdStrike because of just how devastating that was. You know, not only to the companies involved, like CrowdStrike and Microsoft, but you know, I would definitely say, you know, this probably, you know, this outage probably cost billions of dollars in lost revenue, and it kind of proved my point is that, you know, Delta, which was affected for a week here in America, is now suing CrowdStrike and Microsoft for $500 million because that's how much they said they lost during that week. And so anyway, I could talk about this a lot, but you know, we're not going to talk about it. That's not what this show is about today. So, but you know, the only thing I want to say about it is to make sure you have really good QA team and you never, ever pass things unless it goes through your entire QA cycle and is tested before you release it. Oh, and the other thing, don't push releases on Fridays. Come on. I've known this forever. Don't do that. You know, my rule if I ran a software team is no pushing major updates on Fridays or Mondays. Just bad days to do it. So hopefully CrowdStrike, oh, and their stock just like plummeted it. I've been watching it. So I want to promote my code performance book. It's been out for what, 3 months or so now. It's got tons of information in there. I learned a lot writing this book. And so if I learned a lot, I'm sure you will too. I continuously keep working on performance. Actually, I was working on some performance benchmarks last night. And so I'm going to be, I think the next article I'm going to write is about performance when using the task parallel library. And I think you're really going to be surprised on some of the things I show you in that article. I was looking at the data this morning. So I hope you go get a copy of my book. I need your support right now. And so I hope you go buy a copy of that book. Also, August 1st, I did a major release of my Spargin project. I'll talk about this in another slide or so. But this, I did a lot of work in the last 3 months on Spargin, not only making the documentation a heck of a lot better than it was, but also making the performance a lot better. And I was able to get I have a lot of methods that increased in performance. It's already up on my blog site. And one even over 1,300 times faster than it was in the previous version. So I hope you go pick that up. Along with that, I also updated my Spargin dev tool, and it's even faster because it uses Spargin, and so it's a lightning fast now. I'm really impressed with it. So I hope you go pick up, we'll go check out those two things. Just go to .NET tips or go spargin.net and you can learn about all of that. And speaking of that, my new article is called Boosting Performance with Copilot / Commands Unleashing New Speed in Spargin. So basically all this stuff I've been doing the last 3 months to speed up Spargin, I've put in this article. So if you want to see exactly how I use Copilot and AI to improve the performance of Spargin, please go read that article because it's all detailed there. And so I hope you learn something from that and start and get Copilot and start using Copilot. I use Copilot every time I use Visual Studio now. That's how much I rely on it or become addicted to it. And it's got a long way to go before it's perfect, believe me, but it is helping me do a lot of improvements. And I'm sure it will for you too. All right, the interview. Khalid has been working with .NET since the beginning and has spent most of his career working with ASP.NET. Recently, he has been at JetBrains as a .NET developer advocate for ReSharper, Rider, and dotUltimate line of products. He also helps in other technology ecosystems such as JavaScript, Rust, and Java. Welcome.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Dude, I hearing 1,300 times performance improvement. We got to talk about that
Yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's it was pretty amazing to me because I figured using CodePilot because I do try to write everything as performant as I can or
hmm
know about, right? And so I thought Spargin was pretty good, and it was, but using CodePilot uncovered some few little tricks, and I'm not talking big changes. I'm talking little changes got those perf increases, you
hmm
know, and one of the things that I guess because I'm not in the .NET team, or I'm not Stephen Tobe and people like that, I've always kind of been a little bit confused about which compiler attributes should I use on my methods, right?
hmm
And which are good on some methods and which are not so good on other methods, and other little tricks like that. And I've been using Copilot to analyze almost every method in Spargin and adding those attributes that I've missed because I just didn't really quite understand how they work and how they work together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know what's interesting? It's like we kind of deal with this uh, idea from a lot of folks who are like, oh, maybe this stuff's too complicated, or oh, maybe I'm not smart enough to understand how to do performance improvements. But
Right.
I guess my tip for a lot of people really to get started is like look at your monitoring tools. So write a
Mm-hmm.
piece of line of code. And I'll do some shameless promotion for tools like ReSharper,
Yeah.
dotUltimate, and Rider. But recently in Rider, we added a monitoring tool window. And as soon as you start your .NET application, we'll actually track things like CPU usage,
Mm-hmm.
memory usage.
Mm-hmm.
We track also all kind of like the .NET telemetry that gets kind of thrown up.
Yeah.
And most importantly, and the thing that probably hurts performance the most in .NET applications is garbage collection, right?
Yes. Yes.
So if you're allocating a lot
Yes.
and the garbage collector has to come in, so this new monitoring tool window in Rider will actually show you when the garbage collector kind of
Mm-hmm.
kicks
Kicks
off.
in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're seeing a lot of those garbage collections happening, that's probably a good time to introduce something like benchmark.net and try to figure out where your allocations are coming from, and how many objects are getting into Gen 0, 1,
Mm-hmm.
and 2, and go from there. So
Yeah.
um, it doesn't take like a super genius. It just
No.
takes looking at stuff and understanding, oh, I want to lower this particular number here and there. So
Yeah.
um
And
yeah.
that's pretty much everything I write on my site and even in my code performance book, right? The goal of my code performance book is to make this super easy for you to go back and implement right
hmm
away, right? And with that said, yes, there are ways that you could spend a lot of time eking out every bit of performance out of code that you can. But I would say that most teams will never give you that time to do it, right? And
Yeah.
so the whole goal of the book is to present different ways of doing things so you have a better idea what probably will work better for you, right?
hmm
And you were talking about allocations, and whenever there's big allocation differences, I put them in the book too, right? Because
hmm
that can be a trade-off, right? If you're allocating a lot of memory, maybe you might not want to do it if it's a little more performant, right? Because it might hurt your garbage collections. Because I'm glad you brought up garbage collections because when companies hire me in the last 10 years or so, especially companies that hire me to fix their performance issues, the number one thing is garbage collections, right? And it's the first thing I do before I do any other performance updates, because to me, if you don't get that out of the way, other metrics won't be correct,
hmm
right? So you have, and I've spent like 3 months just fixing those issues in projects, right?
Yeah.
And dramatically improve the performance just by cleaning up the garbage collections,
Yeah.
right? And properly, dealing with disposable objects and properly implementing your own disposable objects, right?
Yeah, I will say too, what I really like that's happening in .NET right now is kind of the move to introduce more open telemetry
Mm-hmm.
across the board.
Yeah.
So one of the things we see at JetBrains is people typically will buy .trace and .memory to profile issues
Mm-hmm.
when their house is already on fire.
Right. Right.
And it's like,
It's almost too late,
yeah,
right?
it's a little too late. It's well, it's never too late to fix a problem.
Sure.
It's right, unless you're CrowdStrike, then I don't know. But sorry, that was a cheap shot. That was
That's
easy
okay.
easy to take. But no, I was gonna say like the introduction of open telemetry, I think, is going to give a lot of .NET developers
Yeah.
metrics in production scenarios sooner than later. As long as they turn it on, a lot of what the .NET team and kind of the satellite teams are doing at Microsoft is putting a lot of the open telemetry into these like libraries that you're
Mm-hmm.
already probably using. So you can take the extra step and kind of put open telemetry in your own code base. But it seems like right off the bat, if you just opt into OTel, which is Open Telemetry, OTel, then you're going to get a lot of extra telemetry right out of the box for things like database queries, allocations,
Mm-hmm.
web requests from your HTTP clients.
Right.
So these are all kind of places, if you just have that data and understand where some of your bottlenecks are, you can crank up performance in no time. So just pay attention to that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I've always kind of liked application insights, because it already has
Mm-hmm.
some telemetry stuff in it, and I know recently I was talking to somebody about performance, and they said something like, well, what about ASP.NET apps and how do you benchmark that? And I go, well, see, that's a whole different thing. When I talk about benchmarking, I'm talking about benchmarking libraries and things like that, right? When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to, measuring speed in applications, whether it's ASP.NET or another, Windows application, you have to use other things to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because especially with IO bound work, IO bound work is dramatically difficult to benchmark, with something like benchmark.net that runs the thing millions of times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have to use something different. So that's why I'm really glad that, people are getting more interested in telemetry. I have been for a while, but I'm glad that's happening. And I'm glad that, it's not that difficult to, see things like that in application insights and other frameworks.
Yeah. And again, I think the nice thing about all this is like, you were talking about helping teams with improving their performance and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. When you get a team of developers around to talk about this stuff, having data that you can all kind of objectively look at and have a reality form that you can actually have discussions about
Mm-hmm.
is really beneficial to making progress, right?
Yes.
Whereas, let's face it, there's a little bit of cargo culting in
Mm-hmm.
tech. It's like if you do this pattern or do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
style, you're going to get performance. And sometimes those kind of promises don't pan out.
No, they
So
don't. Yeah.
yeah,
Especially when they don't provide any actual benchmarking data. I was kind of reading some of
yeah,
that this morning, where they were just using the stopwatch and stuff, and I'm going, no, no, if you're not showing me benchmark data, I don't really believe your results, right?
yeah,
Because that, benchmarking really pounds the heck out of it, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and you get to see so much more information using something like benchmark.net.
Yeah, I mean, our developer Andrea Kinchin actually is the maintainer of who works at JetBrains, is the maintainer of benchmark.net. And I think last year I wrote that we introduced a dot trace mechanism into benchmark.net, so you can kind of like do your tracing, or it could be dot memory. It's one of those, but you can get a slew of more information and load that stuff into our tools, so you can kind of really drill down and do an investigation on your benchmarks, right?
Yeah.
So you not only see the numbers, but you can kind of go through and understand why those numbers are the numbers they are. So
Yes.
I think that stuff's pretty cool. But you were talking in the intro about like 30 years in tech, and by the way, congratulations. That's a great achievement, by the way. I think I'm nearing like 20 years. I don't know anymore. I've lost count. Yeah. We're old, David. We gotta.
I know. What day is it?
What's my name again? It's all right. But no, we recently celebrated 20 years of ReSharper being around.
Yeah.
And I'll send you.
I remember when it came out.
Yeah, I'll send you this link. It came out in, let's see here. So July 21st, 2004. So, and it actually came out for Visual Studio 2003, which is kind of crazy. But I'll send you this link, and maybe Simon can put it somewhere here. I'll put it in the private chat, and maybe Simon can send it out to all the channels. But if folks want to follow along or look through it, I really recommend it, because it kind of shows you the history of not only ReSharper, but .NET. We have like a lot of little milestones in terms of what was happening in the .NET space and what was happening with Visual Studio. Also things with like Mono. So Mono 1.1 was released in June 2004, which for folks doing mobile development or cross-platform development with .NET Core, they can kind of owe a lot to where we are today with .NET to the folks who worked on Mono, which is kind of fascinating. So,
and this is also, July 5th last month was my 30th anniversary of speaking in public.
Wow.
So the very first public speech I ever gave was July 5th, 30 years ago.
Was it about VB?
No, it's actually about creating help files.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because, I've always been big into documentation, and that's what I was interested in. And I think I was writing an article at the same time for the Visual Basic Programmers Journal. But so I was always big into, we used to have help files, right? And big into that kind of stuff. So that was actually, and I still have a scan of, I took the slide deck for everybody there. I printed it out and took it with me, right? And I luckily scanned one of them, and I still have it. It's on the article that I released last July, on July 5th. So
that's amazing. Like that is very extra of you to be like, I know people are going to want my slide deck here. I'm going to go and print this out for you. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, that's before, sharing that stuff was easy, right? Back then, back in '94, sharing stuff like that wasn't super easy. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, people didn't even have cell phone cameras. So like people probably writing notes down with pen and paper.
Yeah.
Cave people. Oh man. It's fine.
But in that article, and I've talked about this a lot, I've written about it a lot, I hope people go read it, is that, that one thing that I did, and the reason I did that is in the article, and it's the first time I publicly said it, but the one thing that I did dramatically improved my career, right? If I didn't learn how to communicate and speak in front of people and things like that, I would not be where I am now. I guarantee it, right? My career would have been much different, so.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up, like one of the questions you'd send me, it's like, what advice would you give developers who are starting with ASP.NET and stuff to build a strong foundation for their careers? And I think, it's not really about technology like you're saying, it's about communicating and empathizing with your users, right? Like
Yeah.
we I think the industry's kind of gotten into a strange place where we focus way too much on the technology. So you end up with things like weird interviews where you're solving programmatic
Yeah.
and like algorithmic problems,
Yeah.
which, let's face it, like there's a small niche of people actually doing that kind of work.
Yes.
And in reality, a lot of software developers need to understand that when they're writing software, they're writing it so that some other human being can benefit
Yes.
from that solution. So
Yeah.
it's
I
not really about technology. It's about helping other individuals and being empathetic. And I
Right.
think what you said is very to that point as well.
Yeah, I've said this before, is that I have always, as long as I can remember, felt that my job as a software engineer is to make someone else's life or workflow better. Right, that's
Hmm.
my job. Right, my job isn't really to be the best coder in the world, even though I like doing that. My job is solving issues or problems or providing features for the end user. Right,
Hmm.
that's my job. In code, and this was why I think a lot of people are a little too afraid about AI right now. Code is just the tool to allow you to do that, right? It's. I would love it if I coded less, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because that would give me more time to focus on the users and focus on their workflow and focus on making things easier, right? And and even before I became a full-time software engineer, when I started writing applications at General Atomics, right? And I would always do it at lunchtime, and I would sit in my little tiny room uh, at General Atomics, and I would, when I was writing this application, I would say, okay, how would the my boss's secretary use this application, right? Because yeah, the application's for me, but how would she use it, right? And
Hmm.
I would envision myself being her, right? And how would I see it? How would I want to? What would I want to see in this application to make it easy for me from her standpoint, right? Because I always believe that the most difficult programs to use are the ones developed by developers, right?
Yeah.
because because they develop it for themselves, not for the user, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like anytime you can actually, this is kind of why I love developer advocacy. It's like anytime you can actually talk to the people using your software,
Yes.
and it goes back to building your communication skills. Anytime you can talk to people and really understand what problems they're running into, um, the faster you can kind of build that relationship, and you'll just be more successful because of
Yes.
it. So yeah, like if you want a strong long career in tech, it's like, this might sound cliche, but work on those soft skills
Yes.
and remember what your role is to help people kind of solve problems.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll have a long career from that. If you become like a particular expert, like let's say you were 10 years ago focusing on becoming a Silverlight expert, you're probably, you probably didn't last very long.
Yeah.
So
Well, in the article that I'm working on right now, that I'm going to release before the next show, right, about the advice I would give, I have a whole actually the biggest section in the article is about soft skills, right?
mhm,
Because that's what is, I think, the most important, and I think is focused on the least, right,
mhm.
in software engineering. And I state something in there that I've I have forgotten more than I know, right? Because there's been so many frameworks come and go, even in .NET, even since
Yep,
.NET came out, there's so many things that don't even exist in .NET anymore, right? And
yep.
.NET's only 23 years old, so that's why I've always, recommended to, in my writings or teaching or whatever, is focus on the soft skills, because the soft skills you can use your entire career, You know, there are skills I learned before I became a software engineer that I still use today, right?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
and it's not about, because back then I was using Visual Basic 2 or 3, right? So
hmm
it's got nothing to do with the language. It's about to do with the process of writing great software, right?
Yeah. And I think you brought up AI. Like, for me, I've definitely seen use cases for AI that have been really compelling. At JetBrains, we just released full line code completion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using any of our IDEs, you'll get kind of the next line generated for you based on this fine-tuned model that runs completely locally in the IDE, can work in disconnected scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
lightning fast. Um, so that's been super helpful for me as I write code because it works really fast. It doesn't kind of make me pause. Whereas things like multi-line code completion can be helpful when I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to implement a full method, but I
Right.
also find it kind of distracting at times if there's too much code because it
Yeah.
it stops my flow. So I think with AI, let's say let's address the elephant in the room with AI. Like there's this fear that it's going to be here to take everyone's jobs. I don't really see that happening.
I don't either.
Uh, Even as complex as these models are getting, I still think, again, like as human beings, you still need to understand what the problem is, why you're solving that problem,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately you're going to have to iterate on that solution over time.
Right.
No one has produced a V1 product that is feature complete
Yeah. No.
and is done.
Right.
So for me, like AI can be helpful, and I think that's Microsoft picking the term Copilot, JetBrains picking the term AI assistant
Mm-hmm.
is really apt. It's not there to do your job for you; it's there to assist you, right?
Yeah.
And
I agree.
yeah,
I
yeah,
came out with a meme. I think I put it out this week. That basically said, "Calm down. Don't be afraid. AI is not going to take your job anytime soon. At least not in 2024." Right.
yeah.
And because I've been using AI pretty much every day since Build, right, the Build
hmm
conference, right. I'm here to tell you that at the current state of AI, your job's not going away. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. AI just isn't that good, at this point.
yeah. I mean,
And
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, it's not as perfect as, or or even the closest. I'm saying it wrong. There are a lot of things that AI spits out that doesn't even work, right?
hmm hmm
And can even cause problems, right? So you still, just like if you're looking at something that you got from Stack Overflow or someplace like that, you still have to look at it. You still have to realize what the heck it's doing, because we're just not there yet. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll say something different. But right now, the state of it is it's just an assistant. It's a tool. It's not going to replace you. It might do other things in the tech world, but as far as software engineers go, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. The I was using JetBrains AI assistant to maybe learn a little bit of Rust.
Hmm.
We have a great Rust course built into Rust Rover, which is our IDE for the Rust community. But I found the AI part to be super helpful in terms of not giving me the exact information I needed, but slowly uncovering concepts and theories that I was kind of ignorant to at the time.
Hmm.
So I would download somebody's project, somebody's Rust project, and open it. And I would look at the syntax that was strange, and I'd have AI explain it to me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what I would do is I would write down the keywords that would kind of pop up in the response.
Yeah.
And then I would use those keywords to go do research and to understand, oh, this is what this means. This is what this concept means in this particular use case. So, AI, as it stands right now with large language models, is really, really good at summarization.
Right.
taking long pieces of text, long pieces of code, and kind of giving you like an overview of what's happening in there. What it's not good at is the data sets for large language models right now is still very opaque. So most of these models, you really only know the current snapshot's final date,
Right.
but that doesn't actually tell you what was in the data set. I actually have an example even from this last week. So I've been doing some game development with Godot engine, just kind of learning that. And when it comes to generating code in C#, a lot of these large language models are great because the C# data set is so huge. You know, C# is used in enterprise applications, web applications, desktop, video games, all that stuff. So when it comes to generating C# code for full line code completion or multi-line completion, it typically does a very good job. But for Godot, there's a scripting language called GDScript, which is a much smaller niche community. The language is really, really fun. It's very Python-like, but there's just not a lot of data out there in terms of GDScript. So if you were to ask an AI model, hey, generate this in GDScript, more often than not, it looks at the code and assumes you want Python code and not GDScript code, right?
Yeah.
So those are kind of limitations that I have personally seen and experienced. So like you said, I don't know if AI is it's a tool, but I don't think it gives you the luxury of turning your brain off anytime soon.
No. And I want to talk a little bit about what you're talking about, the explanations. You know, in Copilot, you know, they have a / command called explain, right? Where you can point it at any code, whether it's yours or not, right? And it will analyze it and explain it to you. And it does actually a really good job, you know. And even some things like, you know, after Spargin was released on the first, I was going, okay, what I want to do for the next version. And one of the things that's been on the back burner for a while is a long time ago, I found a library from Xamarin that made it pretty easy to detect what kind of network connections your computer has, right? To see if, you know, things are up or down and, you know, all that. But I never got it to work right. And then Xamarin's kind of done anyway. And so I was sitting there going, I'd really like to have this feature in Spargin, but I have no idea how to figure this out. And all I did was say, and this isn't really documented on Microsoft's site yet, but you know, there's a command called /generate, right? And you can just say generate. How do I detect the network connections on my computer? And bam, it spit it out, right? And I didn't use all the code. I changed it. I made it much different, but it told me the library that was already in .NET, which I didn't know about, to get this information, right? So now with Spargin, you can detect all your network connections, including Bluetooth.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I will say, you know, like when it comes to code generation, I know a lot of people are kind of worried like, oh, AI is just going to copy my code and then not give me credit. But the thing I've started to realize, like, I'm an open source author, you're an open source author. I think for me, if these AI models could generate like samples using my library, which more often than not, it's going to do that, right? Like, rather than give you, you know, a library's code base that is, you know, thousands of files big, what's more likely going to come out of these language models is a reference to your open source library. And I think from that perspective, as open source authors, you now have a new outlet for people to discover your libraries and potentially use them. And I think that's kind of a good aspect of AI. I will say, though, recently I saw that's also been an attack vector on Stack Overflow. People are pasting samples to Python packages that essentially steal people's crypto wallets and stuff like that. So again, this is
Yeah.
you as a developer.
Yeah.
Don't stop thinking. You got to keep thinking. So
Yeah.
it's important.
And the one thing, and I'm sure applications like Copilot will get better at this, and it does do this somewhat, but it actually learns what you like to do, right? And like how you like. I'm using Copilot to write all the documentation in my stuff in my open source library now, right? And it kind of learns some of the stuff you keep asking it, and it remembers it, right? And the next time you won't, it actually learns, right? Or even, most I have an attribute in Spartan that I use almost on every method in class, and it's called the information attribute, and the information attribute provides a bunch of information that makes it easier for me to maintain my library. Like, have I optimized the code in this method? Have I benchmarked it? Have I unit tested it? What's the state of all this stuff? And it starts adding those to your methods when it learns that it's on almost every single method in Spartan, right? And it starts adding it. It doesn't add it completely correct, like with the correct dates and everything, but it still tries to start learning your method, how you do things. And so it's not just, here's what Microsoft says to do, and you can only do it this way. We're going to adapt to the way you do things, right?
Yeah. This is an idea I've kind of been batting around in my head, and potentially what I think the future of software, at least senior software developers, might be on software development teams. Is the one of the roles of a senior developer is to kind of help mid and junior developers and guide them to correct solutions.
Right.
And funny enough, this is kind of my role as a developer advocate as well. I write a lot of tutorials. I talk to a lot of people, try to get them situated and in the right direction in terms of solutions. But with LLMs in the mix, I could really see companies investing in a team of senior developers who write a bunch of sample code for what they think is kind of the right way to, maybe write a unit test or to solve particular problems. And then you'll have this kind of proprietary company focused code sample data set. And then that data set could potentially be used to train an LLM that could be used by junior and mid-level developers to, really have a fine-tuned model for the particular domain problem that you're solving. In addition to a senior developer helping people from a personal and soft skills perspective, they can have this LLM that's fine-tuned on the skills of people at the company.
Yeah,
and
that would be a great addition, and I'm sure that's coming, at some point, but, but you're right, it's someone like a senior or principal software engineer like I've been can write these things and then, have like something in Visual Studio, make sure those things are getting applied. I know we have, I would say crude capabilities of this, compared to AI and in refactoring tools and Visual Studio and things like that. But that takes a lot of work to make sure everybody's following it and everything like that. So I think if you can employ things like that in AI, and every time it builds, it says, hey, you didn't do this exactly to company standards, you need to go back and fix it, and things like that. Yeah, I'm sure that's coming. It's going to take a while, but yeah.
But I see like, right now the LLMs that people are using are very general models.
Yeah.
So like as companies essentially fine tune, this kind of goes back to your first point. If your ability to communicate not only in like written human text, but to clearly communicate intent in code, if you practice those skills, I really see that being a plus for the future, because you're going to be producing a lot of this code that is helpful in solving problems.
Yeah.
but also valuable to folks building LLMs that could potentially be used by companies to increase their productivity. So I think this stuff's going to come full circle like that. And this is where I think, like, as advice for developers out there, it's like, get out there and solve real problems. The leak code stuff is fun and it's neat. Like, it's a fun sport in a sense, but I also feel like it's not really based in reality in terms of what most people are doing. So get involved with open source, write a lot of samples for yourself to try to better understand how to use a particular library, and talk to other people. I think talking to other people is super important. So
Oh yes, and that's one thing I bring up in this new article I'm writing, is that, you know, and I will always not stop talking about the power of talking to people in person, right? And that, you know, these virtual events, you know, either meetups or user groups or even conferences just don't, in my book, that's not where the value is for me. It's never been the value to me going to events like that. The value always to me is talking to people, right? Because you will learn so much more than you learn in the conference just by talking to people. Right. And then, especially when you get to talk to people, you can maybe, you know, ask specific questions based on the challenges you're going through at work, and, you know, things like that. Like one time I remember, of course, this is a long time ago because Microsoft held it here in San Diego, but I went to, I think it was a tech ed. Back before Build, it was tech ed, right? And I remember I was working at this e-commerce company, and we were, you know, in the midst of trying to figure out how to migrate our systems onto a completely new system that me and someone else architected. And the challenges involved, especially when it comes to the data, the database was the biggest problem, right? And so it just so happened I was sitting at this table. I don't think I was even talking to somebody at first. And there was a guy there, I'll always remember, he's from State Farm, who have been going through the same thing, right? And he basically told me or everybody at the table how they're approaching this until they can get everything moved over. And I go, wow, that's a really good idea. Let me take this back to the database people at work, right? And you just can't get that sitting in a session or sitting in a meetup, an online meetup or anything like that, right?
Yeah, you're right. Like, you know, the thing I appreciate about, like, shows like this, and just hearing more from people doing .NET, you know, it's nice to hear, you know, about products and libraries that are happening in the space. But sometimes the thing I miss in the .NET space, which I think shows like this kind of provide, so that's why I'm so appreciative of being here. But, like, just hearing real people trying to solve real problems. And, you know, it's not always glamorous. We all make mistakes. We all learn from those mistakes and we get better. So, like, for me, I always find it fun to read people's blog posts that are not only informative and telling you maybe, hey, this is what worked for me, but also describing, oh, here are some of the challenges that I faced. And like you said, communicating with other people, you get this kind of unfiltered, real connection. And I think that's what community is about, building those kind of connections with people. So it's pretty cool.
And unfortunately, I don't know how it is in your area in Philadelphia, but or Pennsylvania, that, you know, like, all the user groups have dried up here in Southern California, right? And so we don't have these opportunities anymore. And I really hate it. You know, I really don't like it because I don't get to talk to people. I don't get to hear other ideas. I don't get to talk to recruiters, you know, when I need them to look for a job. And you know, that you being in person is just invaluable to me, right? And in all my writings, I try to encourage, especially younger developers, to get out of their comfort zone and go talk to people, right? Because, you know, that's really, the community is, to me, is the number one thing on learning and finding a job. And I found more jobs working in community than any other method, right? And it's just so powerful, and I wish, we could get back more to that, like it was, in the 90s or early 2000s, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that's just a symptom of like, um, in the .NET space in particular, we're kind of always sold this message that you can always write more C sharp to solve any problem. Um, Maybe that's true, maybe it's not true, but it does kind of, the .NET space is really built around the lone hero,
Yeah.
do more with less kind
Yes.
of philosophy.
Yes.
And I can see that being helpful for small teams of
Hmm.
software developers to
Sure.
do more with less. But I also think it like fundamentally positions all .NET developers into this competitive space where it's like, oh, I gotta beat that guy and I gotta beat
Yeah.
that gal, and it's like I gotta find my edge in this space. And I
Or
think
like
that,
people on Twitter
yeah,
say, "Well, you're not a real developer if you don't do this." I'm going, "Are you kidding me?"
yeah, yeah,
That's your opinion, but it's not true for
yeah.
everybody, right?
So at JetBrains, I get a lot of opportunity to dabble in other communities like Java. I've been to Ruby conferences. I just helped the Rust team,
Hmm.
announce Rust Rover, and I just wrote a Java article. So it's like I get to kind of see a lot of the other communities as well, and I can see some of the things that other communities are doing that maybe I'd love to see kind of migrate or find its way into .NET from a community perspective. And I think again, like I'm not trying to boost your ego here, David, but like shows like this, I think are really helpful to kind of bring communities together, realize it's not so competitive. We don't need to kind of like beat up on each other. We can kind of help support each other, and kind of we'll all succeed because of that. So
And that's what I truly believe is
yeah.
that if we all work together, we can all succeed. We're all in this together, and like you said, it's not an individual sport, right? It's a
Hmm.
team sport, and we're all in it together. And sharing your knowledge, I think, is paramount, right? Not
Hmm.
only because you should, but because you'll learn more by doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've stated this before. It's in my new article too. Is I totally realize that a lot of developers are introverts, and I still consider myself an introvert. A lot of developers have imposter syndrome. I definitely do, right? We all It's a common trait with software developers, right? And so, but I'm here to tell you, you can get over it because I did, right?
Yeah.
And I believe if I could do it, then anybody could do it, right? And that's probably my imposter syndrome showing. But but we can do this together. We can make things together. Yeah, we can't share proprietary stuff, but we can share everything else, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And again, that's kind of, like my colleague Rachel, she does like a
Hmm.
monthly newsletter where she kind of finds really interesting blog posts from the community.
And I've known her forever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rachel's great. I, I,
yeah.
I really enjoy working with her. And that's a really good place. We actually, if anybody ever writes a blog post, they can email it to us, and would be happy to kind of put it in our newsletter as well. But all that kind of stuff is really beneficial. And the thing that I've kind of been working on over the last year is I looked at the JavaScript space, and there's
Hmm.
this library called Htmx, and I ended up writing a library called htmx.net, which uses ASP.NET Core tag helpers
Hmm.
to make the integration between this JavaScript library and ASP.NET Core that much better.
Hmm.
And I just did this out of like a whim because I'm like, oh, this is really cool. This is a cool thing happening in the other community.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of awesomeness inside of ASP.NET Core and with Razor. And I wanted to see how that interaction would happen. And that library has somewhat become popular, and folks are really kind of starting to coalesce around it. we're starting to have more conversations. We're also having conversations around like, how do you actually want to build your web applications?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that stuff is really, really interesting to me. So
Yeah.
if folks want to check that out, you can get the NuGet package.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about that very much, but yeah, we talked about AI almost a whole freaking show. So
it's fine. It's fine.
I
We're
know.
having fun.
That's the way it goes on this show. We just talk about whatever. You know, there's no real schedule. Yeah,
Yep.
most of the time. Well, I gotta let you go so Simon can go and do whatever he does at nighttime. So it's been great having you on the show. It's been I've really enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy talking to you, but out of the 3 times you've been here, I think this is definitely my favorite. So
Oh, all right. Thank you. Yeah.
but I really enjoy having you on the show, and I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. And is there anything else you want to say before I let you go?
No, thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you. I think this is fun, and I always enjoy talking to other people. So, folks, have a good one. Thanks for having me, and I'll just say goodbye now.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Wow, that was a really great episode with Khalid. I really enjoyed talking to him. As you can see, I think I was smiling pretty much the entire episode. So I hope people watch this recorded, because it doesn't look like there's anybody watching live. So all of you watching recording, please, I hope you like this, and let us know how you like the show. I have my email coming up here. Whoops. In a second. Let me click on the right thing. Okay, so here's my geek humor for this month. How do you like unit test? I hate it. You're hired. Startup. Yeah, we kind of just talked about that a little bit. Yeah, in a startup, there's not a lot of unit tests, if any. But you know, there's a point where you have to start adding them. This reminds me of this company I worked here in San Diego, where you know, I brought up the issue when I first started the company. You know, why doesn't this huge application have any unit tests? And you'll have to read the article to find out the answer. But, you know, when I started the company, and this project had over 1 million lines of code throughout all the different projects. You know, when I started the company, there were 0 unit tests. When I left the company 4.5 years later, there were 0 unit tests. And you just don't do that for applications you're actually selling for many, many years, as CrowdStrike found out. As always, I hope you will go to thevoiceofslum.org and help me help the kids from the slums in Delhi, India. There's pictures and videos from the last time I visited. I really miss hanging out with Dave and Chandy there, pictured in that picture right there. They're great people, and they do a great thing. And you can take it from me, they not only need your money, but they really do put it to good use. Not only clothing, but teaching the kids, getting them out of the slums in Delhi, and all kinds of positive things. And so whatever you can donate, I hope you go donate, even if it's $5 or more. You know, as software engineers, most of us have the ability to help out others. And so I hope you'll go do that and help me help the kids from the slums there. All right, the next episode, which will be the last for season 4, will be the panel show, The Wisdom from the Trenches, Navigating Career Longevity in Software Engineering. As I just talked about at the beginning of the show, I have 5 experts coming on. All of them I really like, and a few of them I've known for a really long time, so I'm really looking forward to the show. I've been looking forward to it for at least 6 months, I think. And so I hope you'll join us, but please join us live. I know it might not be the most ideal time, but you know, this will be the opportunity for you to ask these experts questions, especially if you're just starting out in this career, on how to have a long, fruitful career and free from as much struggles as I'm going through right now. So please join us for that show. As always, I hope you will go help your fellow human by donating some blood this weekend. Don't wait, do it now. Unless you have a medical condition, go donate blood, because you might need it someday, and so you need to bank up that karma. And speak about donating blood. Here's a picture of myself donating last Sunday. The reason I took this picture, I don't like taking pictures of myself very much, is because I hit 20 gallons of total donations last Sunday. It's a big milestone, not only for myself, but also for the blood bank. They're sending me a special fleece jacket to celebrate. But there's me sitting on a machine for 2 hours, donating platelets and plasma that helps many, many people just with one donation. If you donate just red blood cells, that will help up to 3 people, just one donation. And so I hope you'll go donate because, like I said, you might need it someday. But I could tell you, every time I get off that machine sitting there for 2 hours, I feel good that I've been able to help one of my fellow humans. And so I hope you go do that. With that, thanks a lot for watching. This was a great episode. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please email me at dotNetDave@live.com. And with that, I'll see you on September 7th.